Yo guys, Local JB here. So soon the season will actually end, and let's just have a head start by looking at the things that are currently on PBE. So you're gonna have a advantage. So let's start from the top. So game announcements. Added a banner only announcements for the spawning of all neutral objectives. Void Grabs, Rift, Herald, Baron, Nashor, Drake, Sadder. Well, I mean, this is a queue all for I think lower ranked players mainly. So people will rotate to those more easily, I do suppose. Return of the ultimate spellbook. It usually means that you have another ultimate on your F or D button. It's kind of a fun game mode, but Arena is getting removed, which is one of the unique, fun, interesting game modes, which is kind of weird that it does get removed, but goodbye Arena. Now, interactive emotes basically added the apology, my emote, my bad thing, right? System ping now plays upon combat starting inside the jungle, indicating a jungle invasion. This may trigger until 14 minutes, right? Now, this will just again another Q wall, if you get invaded. Basically, this doesn't really matter all that much in higher ranks where people do actually pay attention to invades. It's just like a quality of life change for like lower ranked players. Alright, let's move on. Shop and inventory. So, selecting an item in the shop now grants the ability to add it in the build queue by clicking on the respective button in the build section. So this will just allow you to have easier shopping. A queued item is displayed in the HUD next to the shop. As the player gains gold, a radial around the item's icon will fill up, indicating the progress until the item can be purchased. When the radial fills, it will flash to indicate that the items are available to purchase. This is another just quality of life change for lower ranked players that may not memorize the price of an item, or I'm not sure, maybe they don't press the shop button or something, but is it just a quality of life change? The purchase button is now more dynamic. Upon selecting an item to view it in the build section, the following states have been added. If the highest tier item is highlighted and that item is purchasable, the button will prompt to craft the item instead of purchase. If the highest tier item is highlighted and that item is not purchasable but any of its components are, then the button will prompt purchase components. Just easier shopping basically. Upon using this button, any purchasable items will automatically will be brought, prioritizing the highest cost item and until no more gold is left to spend. Basically, QOL. Now, the inventory slot of health restoration consumables now flash while under 40% maximum health. The shop button now flashes if the player has exited the fountain without having purchased their starter item at the beginning of the game. So this is kind of a good thing because like sometimes, very rarely, it happens that people forget to buy their base item, Doran item, or their jungle item, which can be more important. In those 1% case scenarios, this will have quite a lot, because it's just simply a quality life of change, which just removes a decent amount of frustration from the game in those rare occasions. So this is seen to be a good thing. Cleaned up idle and attack priming, brightness and particles. So it will be a bit more clear when the tower is about to shot, so it will be easier to learn how to, like, let's say if you play a range champion, how to weave in some basic attacks and walk out of its range, I do believe. So this will help also with like other Tryndamere players as well. As an example, the basic E out in time without taking a tower shot if you can. Increase the fidelity of all parts of the tower's attack, reduce the size and noisiness of the hit visual. Warmed up attacks now have special effects per stage. Attack orbs and their launch visual become larger and brighter, and their colors blend more smoothly with the trajectory colors. Attack trajectory transforms to an erratic line pattern and gain particle effects. Hit VFX becomes brighter, larger and gain lancing effects. So this is just a key wall. Again, this will just make, I do believe, just simply playing around like tower range, tower vision, just gonna be a bit easier. Now there are some buffs as well. Spider Queen, Alice's passive. As it's just a very simple one, basically she's gonna lose a little. No, actually she's gonna get a little more later on, basically 5 HP, which is just simply whatever, honestly, because basically sometimes they will not die to AoE in the late game, but it's just not really much. Now grant sight of the target for half a second at the beginning of the cast, and spiderlings in the volatile now dash to the target upon using the ability instead of upon its damage application. Okay, that's fine. That's good. This just somewhat helps, I believe, because, like, again, this revealing the target, generally speaking, means that invisibility will be less so much of a counter to Alice's Q, because most of the abilities that have 0.25 cast time, they do actually get cancelled if, for example, Shaco Qs away or someone goes invis, maybe walks in a bush, which bushes are a lot in the jungle. This is just a cute little quality of life change, which also allows you to reveal the enemy champion for a slight moment. So if you can turn into human form, maybe it will be easier to land a cocoon because you see where your opponent are, right? You can see where that Shaco is if he exactly Qs when you Q, as an example, and it will be easier to like look for AE. Okay, new effect. Now cast from whenever the caster is at the end of the cast time. Basically it means that you can E-flash and it will flash from it will go off from the position to the position you flashed, so basically it just gives you like a better E-flash opportunity. Now grants true sight of the target for the duration of the disability. This just specifically helps into some specific champs, like Kha'Zix, if you would cocoon, Kha'Zix would go invisible, Qiyana whatnot, so you can actually get Valdi out of the rest of your kit, just because you do actually like get to like reveal your opponent. So this is like sometimes against those invisible champions it will be useful. U effect now always gains her Spider Queen bonuses upon descending instead of only when descending directly upon an enemy by issuing attack order. What? What? That's just weird. New effect location target recast by using movement order or repel again can now be activated within 1 second of the duration. I do believe that's a nice little change. Vision radius increased, location target recast range increased. That's good. Some extra range will allow her to get some sneaky gang stuff, right? No longer incorrectly calculates the Spider Queen's total effectiveness, including the bonuses. Previously it would use the factor of the cocoon stance duration. Instead of the proper... okay. I just weird. Alright. Now you can also turn from human to spider form a little faster, because you have some extra reach on your E. And you want to E in aggressively, you can turn into spider form a little bit faster to land that E if you engage. Now we already talked about before the K'Sante changes in my other video. Basically he will be stronger than before, he will be quite viable. So basically I would say like I would even play K'Sante, right? So let's move on from that though. Queen, just visual updates on her skins, but the champion still feels to be kind of dog shit. Soraka, another bad champion, but does get some visual updates. Tristana. Now the thing about Tristana is that she does get some extra auto range. Basic attack damage is also increased by 1. Attack damage growth is reduced though by 1.2, so that's quite a lot. The attack speed ratio is increased, right? And the armor growth is reduced by half amount. Now health regeneration growth is also reduced, so we can see some of the defensive stats to some extent they are reduced, but the bonus range is a bit more significant. But it's like a bit faster, or no, it's the same way, it's the same way as before. But the main thing to watch out for is that you do have more base attack range, right? So you will have more in the late game than before and more early on, which will mean that it's harder for their opponents to just outspace her so easily. Bonus attack speed increased, so the attack speed does actually increase by a 10% early and later on. Now the more significant thing is that the base damage is reduced by 95, which means early on you're gonna have somewhat less damage, I believe, but the slow duration is increased to 2%, which means you already have a tier 3, right? Slow duration, but the slow percentage is reduced by 20 for balancement purposes, so later on Tristana's W will deal more damage. But I think like later on it's also kind of weird, because like has a lot of nerf on it, right? There's a lot of nerf when you put more and more points in it, but I don't suppose, like, will it even be a maxable ability after this buff? Maybe, we will see. Now the passive base damage is also reduced, so her wave clear is somewhat less. Bomb base damage is also reduced by 10. Bonus damage per stack is reduced by 5%. Maximum bonus bomb damage reduced to 10, so from 120 to 100, which can be a bit concerning, because like in some matchups it's very hard to like W in aggressively into Braum as an example, or Alistar. So in those type of matchups this could be seen as a nerf if you don't get to jump in, right? You only get to use your EQ mainly, and that makes you gonna use W defensively, which means that the damage doesn't even matter. But the bomb AD ratio is changed again by 10%. Bomb critical strike ratio is increased also. It's increased, and it also does scale with your crit damage. So I do suppose later on it will actually deal somewhat more damage. Now, the other notable thing is that her R will get nerfed by 25. Later on by even more obviously, but it will actually scale with 70% of your bonus AD. Cooldown reduced to 100 seconds at all ranks from 120, which generally speaking means you can get more ultimates up to be a bit more snowbally. And you have an additional effect, so basically you will stun all enemies hit by 0.4 up to 0.7, which means you can swing in more easily an extra basic without your opponents like basicing back or doing something. Sanguine Blood, Vladimir's W is getting nerfed because of the brain damage W build. It's just basically press W, heal fully of the wave, so it heals way too much, it can be quite oppressive. So it's just like, I don't know, like Vladimir is not even that good of a champion, it's just like this pool build can be kind of OP in some matchups. Now, too much I will not get into the items, because like who wants to read all that much, right? So basically, exactly, I read the whole thing, and so what I have to say is that yes, so the thing is that offensive items will be nerfed by 15%, as Riot Games said, and defensive items usually by 5%. So some of the items, well, mainly like few of them get some adjustments, or they are not hard nerfed, or they are just very lightly nerfed compared to other ones. But there is just main emphasis on, like, as I said, like most of the items will provide less value and they will cost more, and the items that are already strong, they will cost even more and provide even less. So for example, if I keep scrolling, you know, we can see all of these components. So like we can see, even so Bami Cinder does get actually HP reduction. As an example, it doesn't scale with HP. While also notably it gets a 2%, but Bami is actually getting quite hard nerfs on tanks. And so the notable thing is that boots, obviously other items, are also slightly here and there nerfed, and a lot of these are not even worth to mention, just because the numbers just speak for themselves. The more notable things is that components, so components like Bramble Vest do actually get buffed. So imagine getting Bramble Vest into a Queen or into an Akshant, there is insane like damage reflection. So it will be very difficult to deal with you, same as Cowfield as an example. It does actually get to cost 50 less, which just generally speaking will allow you to, you know, get it a bit faster than normally. Quite a lot of mobility does get nerfed, because God, 40 to 60 mobility on an item that already has 5% mobility, that's extremely shit to deal with. So for balance reasons, it does also actually have this extra, you know, it does have this extra like nerf, which it does receive on both sides. So it's not only 1% less, it can only give you 20 bonus movement speed, but only specifically on magic or true damage, so it doesn't work on physical damage abilities. This is specifically a nerf, I would say, for Volibear, because he does actually build this item, and so if you don't have your passive upfront up, your QW will not give you this proc, this speed proc. It will only specifically give you if your passive is up. So this will cause you some chasing issues actually, to the point where it may be less viable. So that's like one of the better examples, but obviously on champions like Vladimir it will be way worse, because now it's actually like way harder say, to disengage from a champ like Yon, which is already hard, you know, as an example, or to kite out bruisers that try to engage on you, right? Mobility, as I said, everywhere gets nerfed. Items are a bit more expensive. Some of them do actually get a price increase. Some of them get a price increase plus a nerf. So depends on the item itself. As I said, the worse the item is, the less nerfs does it receive. Mainly, I would say like some items also get like some mini reworks as well. But most of these I'm just scrolling through for you guys. But like most of these are not very notable. The more notable ones are actually the Hollow Radiance, for example, and the Sunfire Cape. As I said, like one of the nerfs. Some of them are not super significant, but basically there are some that are a bit more concerning split pushing wise, because we can see like some of these are getting nerfed by quite a lot. If you think about it, quite a lot. We can see health is increased, but notably what would actually matter is the AD, the speed, the pushing power, not the HP, because most of the champs that would build this don't necessarily scale with HP. So even so, like split pushing will be hard nerfed, because this is one of the solo queue split pushing tools. The other notable thing is that, for example, Iceborne does get an adjustment, so it does cost 300 more K'Sante item, right? But it will not have that HP ratio that will increase its slow. And notably, it will deal 50% bonus base AD damage, which means that you will have more damage, but in long term you will have less slow. Early on, when you buy it as a first item, it will be feel to be the same as before, but with more damage. But you get it more delayed. Now, Imperial Mandate, again, like some of them are getting more heavily nerfed. As I said, mobility is getting quite heavily nerfed, so champions that do actually, they hate actually mobility, right? They hate mobility because they can't ever get close. Their champ is not super functional because people sidestep everything. So basically champions that are either skillshot mages, perhaps skillshot bruisers like Aatrox, right, that also hates mobility, they will hate mobility less because quite a lot of mobility is removed or nerfed. But okay, let's move on. We understood it. Less speed. Other one, Infinity Edge. So it does get a 200. Before I seen it getting an AD nerf as well, but I think they removed that. So Infinity Edge will cost 3600, which is kind of bad, especially if you may wanna rush it. Then the more notable thing is that even so, items like Kraken Slayer for on-hit ADCs, they quite hardly get nerfed because the attack damage is reduced, the movement speed. Basically, we can see that there is also like a huge DPS nerf, both on the melee and the range side. And I kind of want to point out the fact that, as I said, I will not talk about like very basic things that are not really worth to talk about, some changes. There is like a more important one, so Manamune. It will have the 0.5%, right? Mana ratio, it will be lowered. But this is one of those items that are notably still gonna be decent. Mercurial Scimitar, which means it's harder to actually deal with like mages in general, while also notably against CC champs more so that's very important to watch out for. Again, Mercury threads do actually cost more, which means that if you face a Gragastop or whatnot, you will get your boots insanely late, and to the point where it's questionable to buy it because then you insanely delay your first item. So people that do buy into Syndra, for example, Mercs, this will be very painful because you are investing way too much into Mercs, to the point where you delay your first item by quite a lot, which means the Drakes will be more likely to be controlled by your opponents. Some other items do actually get changes, again just nerfs, right? But when we have this Muramana, so when it's finished from Manamune, it also does receive a slight nerf. But I think this is one of shock ability bonus damage, so that's a bit more notable. Shock ability bonus damage, that's a bit more notable, but I would say this is one of those items you should still regardless build on Smolder on Ezreal, so the build path will not change. Navori again, just the mobility is cut, the price is slightly higher, but it's not that hardly nerfed. So as I said, some components are also changed by a little bit. Scrolling downwards, attack damage reduced as well, lethality, move speed and whatnot, same as the lethality. So for lethality scalers, like specifically Pike, this will may suck when they nerf the lethality, because he will deal actually less damage to find lethal, plus like it really comes down to that your passive and E does actually scale with lethality. Quite a lot of, like, again, plating damage reduction is increased by 2%. Profane Hydra also gets a decent, a very big, I would say could be kind of a big nerf, honestly, right? Because like heretical cleave damage is no longer increased, so it means if you are smartly layering it, well, you don't. Cleave AD ratio is also reduced, so I think assassins are getting yet again killed or whatnot. I mean, like, how the hell is this even like a real thing? But yeah, Rabadon does cost more, provides less, so for scaling mages it will be worse. Rabadon does get a nerf, but it will be still decent enough to go for it, because again, so lots of champs just don't have other choices, honestly. Icon Fiora, you're still gonna get it as a generic user. Ability power is only reduced by 10. You mainly build it for the slow, now Aurelion Soul, Brand and whatnot. So some of these items still gonna be totally fine. But like, some of these are also like changed in some way. For example, the more notable one is Grudge, so lethality is reduced from 0. It's reduced to 0 from 15, so no more lethality. But your armor penetration gonna be 30%, but there will not be this like lethality scaling passive on the item. This just basically means that scaling wise it will be worse, but I think into tanks it will be better. So this is seen to be a good thing for champions that specifically wanna, I would say, maybe build it into tanks like Ezreal. Shadow Flame, another nerf even for tick damage, so for champions with tick damage this will matter more, especially for champions that build maybe Liandry or something. So this is seen to be a nerf for Karthus, Brand and these champions. Spear, again, does in total, I do believe, attack damage reduced, ability haste is reduced, Dragon Force base ability is increased though, so they are hard nerfing bruiser items as well. Stellax is already quite bad, but they have to nerf it even harder, which is quite significant. If you move downwards, Garen, obviously other Stridebreaker users also do actually get touched on, and Sunfire is actually killed completely, to the point where it will might not be worth at all to build it, because the immolate health ratio per second is reduced, right? So it's reduced by 0.75, which is quite a lot. Now the flat damage will be higher by 5, but that's not so important actually. The immolate damage to minions will be higher, so you don't lose your wave clear, but usually champs that have Bami and they have wave clear in their kit, they're gonna wave clear regardless, they don't need the whole item. New effect now, immolate deals extra damage to monsters, but that's only gonna be good for junglers, and you don't have the ramping up damage anymore from Sunfire, which means if you play Sunfire on a champion like Onshed, you will be a way more dogshit duelist, which means you're just gonna get slapped by other classes. So I think probably they could reduce it, but like removing it completely seems to be a bit illegal. Collector also does, again, it's weird because the lethality gets reduced and it also costs 3,400. So if you buy, for example, Collector I, like usually on Draven as well, Jean, Kate, people tend to do this. And so the issue is that you cannot overprice and you cannot nerf an item like Collector that's already seen to be a very dogshit item, because now that's the nail in the coffin. And basically that's 7k gold, Collector and I together, which means that it doesn't only takes forever to scale. Sometimes you're gonna scale forever with certain champs, but it's kinda like then you're just gonna get all in, or some champions also gonna mess with your scaling in the sense that they're gonna delay your spikes, and this extra delay also sucks, just because you're gonna less likely reach those power spike items in time, which just generally means you're gonna have way less control over objectives in time. So this does suck a lot of dick for ADC players. damn. Health reduced, armor increased, right? So for armor scalers like Malphite, this will be kind of nice. Turn-based damage is increased though, which is generally speaking means you have 5 more, but the armor ratio is reduced by 10%, so you do actually deal more damage on your EW, but obviously the reflection damage in long term will be smaller. Titanic Hydra obviously does get a fat nerf as well, so less AD, less HP. Maybe it still can work out as an item. Biscuits does no longer restores missing mana over 5 seconds. Health restoration is increased to 12%, missing health over 8%, so more healing. Maybe it will be brought on champions right now that don't have mana actually. How much is there? Yeah, because mana-less champions get that much anyways, but it also, I think also they wanted to remove the 40 mana that it gives per usage or sell. But another like bruiser item that does get nerfed is Trinity Force, ability haste, attack speed reduced and whatnot, so that's quite a lot of nerf. HP nerfs here and there, resistances, whatever. This is kinda good to counter action, honestly. ADCs in general, right? Varmog another nerf, Witsand, just basically fray damage change to 45 at all levels from 40 to 80. That looks like a fat nerf to me. That looks like a fat nerf to me, no? Yeah, I feel like it may not be super buildable, but I guess other items did also get nerfed. Another fat nerf, 100 less, that's a lot. Combined cost increased, ability power reduced, as it should be. The more significant, oh yeah, finally it's returned, so you get actually HP permanently, not mana, which is also nice by the way, because you get 90 HP. So basic attacks on attack against enemy champions will grant you for 6 seconds attack speed, so for melee champs it will be 30, for range ones 24, and so it will provide you adaptive damage on attack, which is also like increased, you know. So basically your basic attacks deal 9 to 30. Wait, what? Yeah. 6 up to like 30, 24 at max attacks, at which your basic attacks deal 9 to 30 or 6 to 24 extra damage. So I think this is physical damage, right? So I think lethal tempo will actually come back, especially on champs like Yon Yasuo. And so adaptive damage on attack. So like basically it will also scale with 1% for melee, 0 to 6 for range champs. And so this just generally means this will be back on champions that would love way more lethal tempo than other options like Conqueror, PTA, whatnot. So this will seem to be a good thing. Basically, what else is there? Nimbus Cloak. So Nimbus Cloak bonus speed is also increased by a significant amount, so this will be kind of good for junglers, I assume, that play Smite, and if they wanna use their Smite to gap close, maybe a Udyr would need that extra gap closing power or whatnot, then this will be really sweet. So maybe we will see more Nimbus Cloaks in the jungle. They are changing in a way presence of mind, so basically for melee and range champs you don't get the same value, but you get upfront mana. So for example at level 6 you get almost 20, at 7 21, and the whole point of this thing is just so you get upfront instant mana, but you don't really get that regen. So I think this is kind of an early game nerf. Maybe later on it will be nicer to get that instant mana, but regardless, on mana hungry champs you're gonna need it either way, generally speaking, on champs like Fiora. Shield Bash no longer grants you armor anymore, but you actually gonna feast harder, so damage health ratio is increased to 2.5 from 1.5. Damage shield ratio is also increased to 15% from 8.5, so on Sion this will be way better on shield tanks. So basically we deal more damage, but again you don't get those resistances. What else? Number of ultimates, this is ultimate spellbook, Summoner's Rift. They're gonna change the bounties a little bit in your own favor, obviously. I think this will help a lot to fix the bounty issues. but I want to move on to the teleport. So the goal is to render the spell less rewarding when already in a winning position, specifically during laning phase. This effect is important for late game strategy, and that is unchanged. So an official Riot stance on item efficiency will be published. Other changes, will be some changes that they promise for Swain, because he's kind of dog shit. Voidseeker now will have other effects, so it will pierce through targets, but it will no longer refound the cooldown, which is seen to be a nice thing if you wanna just like have that good AoE. So you can kinda like I don't know. Guess like it's nicer maybe if you don't go AP, or maybe even if you go AP it's kinda nice, but I mean, it helps with wave clear, if you think about it. So I think Kai'Sa will be an interesting champion. She's better wave clear actually. It's like Zeri. But endless elixirs, new rune. So there will be a new rune replaces Time Warp Tonic, Inspiration Slot 2 rune, and the effect will be either one of these elixirs, and it will no longer expire after 5 minutes and can be stacked together at the same time. Reminder, drink water. September honor system update. Multiple can now be honored of regime. Each player can be honored. Gacha skins. Ambassador will be released. So that's it for now, guys. I mainly wanna put emphasis on something before I close the video. So lots of HP scalings will be nerfed, and a lot of tank items will also be nerfed, which means champions that do scale with HP, they will less likely to deal damage of their abilities or heal or shield off their abilities, like Volibear, because his shield scales with HP same as his W healing, which just simply means that his kit will get actually less resistance as well, not only the resistance he gets from his items. The notable thing is that mobility will be nerfed, so mages will be generally speaking more meta, and other melee champs, right, that hate mobility, they just hate mobility, they can gap close. Those champions will be more meta. Champions that also rely more and more on item scalings, such as Kate, Jhin, both of them have high AD ratios, and Jhin's passive also multiplies physical damage. So this just at the end of the day means that you'll be able to, basically their scaling is worse, and it's harder for them to scale. So I think quite often people will pick like maybe a Ziggs bot lane instead of like a Kate or Jhin or whatnot. I think people are just gonna get tired of ADC. Now the other notable thing is a lots of cooldown gets nerfed, a lots of tank item cooldown, a lots of mage item cooldown and whatnot. Lots of cooldown gets nerfed. So what does that mean? So ultimates will be less frequent, but the notable thing is that also some combos will be disrupted. Some combos will be disrupted because, for example, like there are some certain champions, that rely on to have a certain amount of cooldown. Just basically like chain up their abilities correctly, or to go for an interesting like all-in. Now, what could be a good example for that? For example, like this will affect quite a lot stackers as well. Stackers, because the more cooldown you have, the less stacks. No, I mean the less cooldown you have, the less stacks you can have per minute, which can be concerning. And the other thing is that on some champions, like for example Nasu specifically, if you have a lots of cooldown, you can like perma W. But if you don't have insane amount of cooldown, which you're gonna have less right now, then you can't really perma W. There are some other champions that notably can keep up their, obviously like this will be a nerf DPS wise, but it will be also defensively, because some champions will have like less spammy kits, which means they're less likely to escape, less likely to defend themselves in time. This is quite a notable nerf, I believe, for champions that do get a decent amount of DPS increase on their spammy ability, like Cassiopeia does, or basically just like any champion that's like a cooldown scaler. Other champions will Also find a harder time to reset their ability, like perhaps Lucian or whatnot. So this will mess with some. This will mess to some extent with some ability resets and combos. Now, I think that's it for now, guys. These are my general thoughts. I can just dish out as quickly as possible. I hope you guys learned something new, something more notable. I think, in my opinion, this is kind of a lazy split because they basically only nerfed most of the items without adding a new item, without reworking items, without like it feels like this is very lazy. I don't say that it's not necessary because there is a lots of mobility in the game, there is a lots of this and that in the game, but again, it feels to be a lazy ass patch, honestly. Like boring, like uninteresting wise. I think I don't know when did I have the last time such an uninteresting like split. Because like we are used to new items, we are used to like new changes, we are used to new this and that, and this is just basically everything getting nerfed, which is quite the dopamine killer for most of the people. So that's it for now, guys. Have a nice day, y'all.